Okay. And we've been going through, it started as a medicine Buddha program, and then we started to do Arya Nagarjuna's book called Wisdom. Sawa Shira, Munda Prasana. And root text on wisdom. Sometimes it has the nickname $100. Huh? Wait, you have to raise your hand and get the microphone. I'm not giving any money just to people yelling in the class. No? Did the mayor have an opinion? I don't know. No. Sure? Quick. Today. No, cancel that. Too slow. It's called The Middle Way. His book is also called The Middle Way. The name Middle Way kind of started with this book. And then somebody else wrote a book called Entering the Middle Way. And that's Master Chandrakirti. So Nagarjuna lived around, Arya Nagarjuna lived around 200 AD, almost 2,000 years ago. Almost the time of Christ. And then 400 years after him, roughly, came Master Chandrakirti. And we're studying wisdom. And we've had 6 sessions. And we are going to finish in this session. Okay? Yay. Okay? And so in Kyoto, we're going to finish 14 years of Lamrim. And here we're finishing, I don't know if it's 6 years or 6 sessions. Anyway, it's probably around 5 years or something. And there's 4 chapters left that we have to finish, okay? He wrote his book in 27 chapters. And each chapter is called pariksha, which means an examination here. Not the Princeton kind of examination. The checking about something, okay? And so we're going to cover the last 4 chapters, 24, 25, 26, and 27. 24 is called An Investigation of the Arya Truth, the 4 higher truths, okay? Truth of suffering, truth of source of suffering, truth of the end of suffering, and the truth of the path to the end, okay? And he's going to investigate those 4. That's a pretty long chapter, 40 verses, okay? And I started it last time, and I want to do it over. I want to start over again. So we're going to do the whole chapter, okay? Because I think we can do more about it. Okay, chapter 25 is called An Investigation of Nirvana. Okay, and that will be interesting to hear from the greatest Buddhist master after Lord Buddha. He's called the second Buddha sometimes. And there hasn't been anybody since him except for Jetsun Kappa, of the same level. Chapter 26, An Investigation of the Mayor of Limrock's 12 links, okay, the 12 links of dependence, okay, that's chapter 26. By the way, at somewhere all the mixed nuts books interact, they intersect. And chapter 27 is called An Investigation of How We View Reality. How do we look at reality? And that's chapter 27. So we're going to cover all 4 chapters, okay? And then each day we'll do some Q&A also. Is the second class how long, Tim? 75? So we'll do some Q&A. And my Q&As are free-for-all. Free-for-all means a fight with no rules. So if you, you can ask any question. I don't care. Okay, it can be whatever comes in your heart. You're welcome to ask. Okay, and then we're going to talk more about the 5 houses ACI. I have a presentation about the 5 houses each day, a little more detail about the 5 houses. And I thought to do it at the end of this class instead of the beginning of this class, because if you think Sedona people are up right now watching this class, I don't think so. Okay, but maybe they'll watch it maybe they wake up by the end, I'm thinking. Okay, so I don't know if there's anybody left in Sedona. I don't know. Okay, all right, let's see here. Are you guys ready? There should be a picture of a sunset and a sailboat, I think. Ta-da! This was taken out of my hotel window last week. What gives the sunset to the west of Manhattan that distinctive glow? It's the gasoline factories for the whole country are right there. It's called Cancer Alley. And I used to go through it twice a day for 19 years and on the bus. So I was 4 hours on the bus every day. We went down Cancer Alley, but it gives a wonderful sunset. And then you see, what is that, Hudson River, I think? Yeah. And then the Statue of Liberty is to the left, but I couldn't quite see it. And there's this beautiful sailboat there. Here's all these skyscrapers and 5 million people coming and going. And then there's some fool out on a sailboat just enjoying the day. And I thought it was a beautiful picture. To me, it represents Arya Nagarjuna, okay? The sailboat represents Arya Nagarjuna because he's unusual. He's very, very unusual. And he only wrote short poetic pieces. He didn't write long philosophy books. He wrote poems, but they're long, they're pretty long. But he expressed the deepest truth of emptiness through poetry. And after him, about 400 or 500 years later, came Master Chandrakirti. And he wrote a book called Entering the Middle Ways, Majjhimaka Avatara. So getting into the middle way. And then the middle way means Nagarjuna's book. Okay? Nagarjuna lived 700 years after Buddha. There was a mafia that took over after Buddha. It lasted for 600 years. It was called Stanley Abhidharma. And they were nice guys, but dull, very dull and long. It was the first subject I studied with my teacher for 12 years, 12 long years. And it was so dry. And they kind of took over Buddhism after Lord Buddha. And they made it very mechanical and many lists of things. And it's informative, but it's dry, And you gotta be tough to get through it. And they didn't talk a lot about emptiness. They have a short presentation to emptiness, which is really interesting, which we've never talked about, which we could talk about someday if you're in the mood. And then came Arya Nagarjuna, and he also introduced the teachings on bodhicitta. Okay, so he introduced the bodhisattva ideal in Buddhism heavily. The Abhidharma mentions bodhisattva like one sentence or something, but then for Arya Nagarjuna, it was his passion. So he's the greatest teacher ever of emptiness, and he's the greatest teacher of the bodhisattva path. And actually, when we take bodhisattva vows here, we use his ceremony. We use the ceremony that he wrote, which still exists, and we recovered it. John Brady's project recovered it, and we translated it, and we use it, and it's very, very beautiful. He also he was simple. He taught everything simply, but very, very deeply. And also, he had this traditional connection with the kings of India. And this was the ancient model of government. You had a yogi, or you had a great emptiness philosopher, would be the advisor to the king. And we have several books. Like one is called Milinda Pinda in Pali, which in Sanskrit is Minendra Paha, which means the questions of King Menander. And he was a Greek king who reigned in India for a long time. Alexander attacked India 2,300 years ago and took over India. And then he gave the country to 3 or 4 generals. And then he went home, but he died on the way. He died in Baghdad. So there were these kings who were used to listening to philosophers. I mean, if you can imagine the next president of the United States, she's listening to Tim. She's listening to Tim, or something like that. I mean, that would be the similar thing, And I'm just joking, okay? I don't do politics in public. So anyway, imagine if the king or queen of the country and then so we have some beautiful books by Nagarjuna written for kings. A king called Udayabhadra, and Nick is translating one of those and a beautiful commentary to it. So the reason I wanted to show this picture was the difference between the 2 great emptiness teachers in history. Okay, and that's Arya Nagarjuna. Sometimes he's just called the Arya. And generally you get an Arya about every 500 years or something. And he's the big one after Lord Buddha. Okay, that would be 700 years, 600 to 700 years after Buddha. Okay, and he's so famous as an emptiness master that we call him sometimes the Arya. Okay, in the tradition, it's considered impolite to call him Nagarjuna. It's like saying, "Hey, Shin, Tian." Like that, it's just disrespectful, kind of, okay? Just so you know, if you're cool, you say Arya Nagarjuna, okay? And that's his real name, okay? And I won't go into why he's called Nagarjuna, but that's a long story. If you're interested, I put, so Nick finished a translation of Arya Nagarjuna earlier called the 60 Verses. And that is done. It went to publishing. Our publishing process is a little bit like the highways into Manhattan. So there's too many books trying to get out of New Jersey. And we have a tie-up. We usually have a congestion. We have a problem of too many books and not enough editors. So anyway, his book is done. There's a beautiful biography of Arya Nagarjuna in it, okay? So, which was written by my teacher. And it's quite good. It's hard to find a good biography. The reason I wanted to put this picture was I'm working on a book about Chandrakirti, and it was written by Tsongkhapa. So I would say those are the 3 greatest emptiness teachers since Lord Buddha, okay? And there's nobody close to them. I mean, frankly, there's nobody at their level. There's three. It's Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, and Geshe. And so Geshe wrote an explanation of Master Chandrakirti's explanation of Nagarjuna, Arya Nagarjuna. And that was called The Illumination of the True Thought. And it's very, very difficult, and it's very, very deep, and it's very, very complete. And so I started it 12 years ago when Veronica's mom was ill. I used to hang out in the coffee shop. We used to go down and Veronica would take care of her. And then I would sit in the coffee shop and work on this book 12 years ago. And so I'm 1,300 pages finished. And it will be about 1,600 pages. So we're almost finished. And just the chapter on emptiness, by the chapter on wisdom, by Master Chandrakirti, who follows the 6 perfections in his book, roughly. That chapter is 300 verses, okay? A typical chapter of Nagarjuna is 20, okay? So think 10 times longer, 15 times longer. Nagarjuna was a master of saying things deeply and briefly and mysteriously. And then Chandrakirti was more of a nerd, and he explained Nagarjuna, but it took 10 times more pages. So we're translating both in this book. And then you have Geshe explanation, which is the best in history. And I'm not being, prejudiced, just because I grew up in that tradition. We are the only people saving those books in the world. And I've been working on them for 50 years. And Tsongkhapa is unbelievable and wonderful. So it's something we want to save before we go to another world. Okay, and we're working on that. So I see it as a difference between Nagarjuna is kind of like the sailboat, and Chandrakirti is like all the big buildings in Manhattan. You know, like Chandrakirti is complex, and Nagarjuna is simple. And I've been reading the Sanskrit lately because it's so old. It's 2,000 years old. There's a lot of things that are not clear. You know, the Sanskrit is difficult, okay? I like to show off something I memorized in 12th grade, 11th grade, when I was a kid, when I met her. One lot of prayer with her shot of salt that dropped from mirrors, her pierced to the rota and bothered with the being and which we do engender this to floor. What language? It's English, okay? It's English 500 years ago. Chaucer and early Shakespeare, okay? So imagine what happened to Sanskrit in 4 or 5 times that length of time. 25 centuries, not 5 or 4 centuries, okay? So it's difficult, it's really difficult. And what I wanted to say is, what I've been learning is that Nagarjuna's Sanskrit is elegant and beautiful and short. And if you're interested in Sanskrit, that's where you should start. Okay? And then Chandrakirti is complicated and much longer, much more complex. It's beautiful in its own way, but if you're interested to learn Sanskrit, I would encourage you to learn wisdom. The book is called Wisdom. And his style was short and sweet. And people since him have renamed his book. He called his book Wisdom. And then, root text on the middle way called Wisdom. People made it longer and longer. but his style, Nagarjuna's style, is so beautiful, short and sweet, So if you ever have a chance, but that also makes it difficult to understand, okay? Because he doesn't explain things. He just hits you with a mystery. He loves riddles. And you can sit with one of his verses for a long time. And so I'm gonna, I wanted to share some verses with you. If you're in a retreat, there's nothing more delicious than to take a verse of Nagarjuna and sit with it for a day or 2 days, okay? They're short and they're very, very deep, okay? And you can go deeper and deeper and deeper, okay? So I'm gonna give you some verses. You could even just take a photo when they come up, okay? And by the way, to me, the difference between these three great masters of emptiness, Arya Nagarjuna, Master Chandrakirti, and Jetsongkhapa. You don't have to call Jetsongkhapa master because J means master. So the difference between them to me is kind of the difference between the 5 houses of ACI. I think you can find in these 3 ancient masters, you can find a parallel to the 5 houses of ACI. And we're going to talk more about the 5 houses at the end of class, okay? But to me, their style represents 3 different houses, okay? And that's something we're going to talk about. Because the point of the houses, partly, is that there's a different house for everybody. You see? Like, if you're into meditation, then go to which house? Samadhi house. Or you're into the classics, go to classics house. Guess what I'm into? Classics house. Or you can go to, what's the last one? Diamond house. Yeah. So we're going to talk about the houses as we go, okay? And we're going to start with, we're going to start now. Let me see. Let me get this. Not that one. Yeah, hang on. Okay. Yeah. You can take a picture if you want, and you can meditate on it, okay? And this first verse of this famous chapter is interesting, and it says a lot about Arya Nagarjuna because who wrote the first verse? If you read it, who wrote it? I'll read it for you, okay? If all things are empty, if all these things are empty, then nothing can start and nothing can stop. According to you, then, the 4 higher truths, which is the basis of all Buddhism, it's the first teaching Lord Buddha ever gave, could not exist at all. Who's talking? Yeah, it's Kachik. It's, who said Kachik? Refreshing. Oh, never mind. It's just the news guy. Yeah. Arya Nagarjuna is starting off one of the most famous chapters of the most famous book on emptiness in Buddhism by allowing someone else to criticize him. Okay? And that says something about Nagarjuna. You see? He's welcoming. And then the key word, you Americans, is civil debate. Civil means polite debate. Okay? He's encouraging polite debate. Okay? And he's saying, he's like this. Oh, did you have something to say? Please talk first. Something my wife is always encouraging me to learn. Did you have something to say? did you want to say something? And it's so bodhisattva to start out his chapter like that. And it's so selfless. You see what I mean? It's thinking of the other person. He doesn't say, let me teach you about emptiness. I know everything. He does. But he starts out and he says, do you have any problem with emptiness? And the guy says, yeah. If everything's empty, nothing works. Okay? If everything is empty, then nothing works. And as a ACI master, this is maybe half the classes you're ever going to teach is people who misunderstood emptiness. Okay? Misunderstanding emptiness is a worldwide specialty. And it's all over the world and all over history, the last 2,000 years. Then you get people sitting and staring at the wall and trying to see nothing, and someone hits them on the back with a stick if they move. And it's such a BS, somebody sitting staring at a wall trying to think about nothing is so wrong, 100% wrong, foolish. It's so anti-Lam Rim. Why? If you're going to die, the last thing you want to do is sit and stare at a wall. You don't have time. You don't have time to figure out life. You gotta think. You gotta think about it. You gotta understand. You have to love other people. You can't sit in a house and stare at a wall. So anyway, very, very famous opening line. Okay, hey, Nagarjuna, Arya Nagarjuna, he'll call him Nagarjuna, right? Hey, Nagarjuna, if everything's empty, then nothing works. And then the first teaching of the Buddha is canceled. Okay? The Four Truths is canceled. Doesn't make any sense. If everything doesn't matter, if everything's empty, if there's no point of anything, then why did Buddha bother to teach these Four Truths? Why? Okay? That's a very famous beginning. But I think when you're meditating on it, maybe it's more important to meditate on the fact that he put this verse first than the emptiness. You see what I mean? He allows his opponent to speak first. And he honors his opponent, and he's polite to his opponent, and he clearly states his opponent's position. He doesn't try to twist the opponent. There was a politician on the TV yesterday, and the interviewer asked this politician 5 times in a row the same question, and the politician avoided it 5 times shamelessly, they said, what color is the sky? And he's like, I like fish, and everyone's like, huh? And then she said, no, but what color is the sky? And he says, also pita, and then she asked him 5 times, and then she's like, okay, forget it, But so what I'm saying is the way he starts this chapter, maybe it's more important that he was so polite to someone who's attacking his ideas. And he almost seems to love the other person. Okay? And maybe that's the message of the chapter. Okay, I'm just proposing it. All right, next picture, you guys. I gotta dig through them because I got so many. Yeah. So I'm sorry, my photo agency sold out to this guy called AI. And the guys are handsome, so I thought the ladies would like the 4 guys. But they never quite get the fingers right. I don't know what that is, I want to give them a finger, but never mind. So to me, these 4 guys represent the 4 truths, okay? The 4 truths. And who wants to say them again? suffering, cause of suffering, end of suffering, how to get to the end. If you put them in order of time, if you put them in the order that they occur in real life, the order is different. What would the order be? The cause of suffering, like you are impolite to another debater. Number 2, you suffer. Number 3, you practice a path to get out of the suffering. And then number 4, you get out. So there's 2 ways to order the 4 truths. By the way, noble truth is a bad translation of by some British guy in 1860. And I don't know, the bad translations survive and the good translations fade away. But it has nothing to do with this topic, okay? It's a bad translation of the word Arya, okay? These 4 principles are called the Arya principles because when you see emptiness directly, you understand these 4 directly for the first time, okay? All right, there's a traditional relationship between us and the 4 truths. Okay? There's a traditional relationship. So whenever someone, traditionally, when they teach the 4 truths, they tell you 4 ways of relating to the 4 truths, okay? And that's a very important principle in the teaching of Lord Buddha. That was his first teaching. How long between when he got enlightened and when he taught? Did he teach the next morning? He waited 7 weeks, I think, 49 days. Stanley Nelson went with me. Well, I went to Varanasi to the Sanskrit University, and then they went to Deer Park, which is where Lord Buddha gave this teaching, I think. And then, I remember we got out of the airport and our taxi was followed by an elephant for like a couple miles. And they were like, "Is that normal, Geshe-la?" And I was like, "It's India, everything is normal." Okay. So anyway, there's four things you have to do if the 4 truths are correct. Okay, and here they are. Number 1, we call Shepaja. Shepaja means that's how you should relate to the first truth. What's the first truth? Pain, suffering. Okay, everything about your life is pain. Okay, and then you should, and excuse my language, but you should realize what the hell's going on. Okay, many people go through the whole life, get older, die, and they never figure out what the hell's going on. And Buddha's like, wake up. Didn't you notice your grandparents die? Didn't you notice your parents die? Didn't you notice on the way here from Tucson, somebody died? We passed them. We weren't them. We got here. But it happens every day, all the time. Are you blind? Are you stupid? Are you crazy? You're gonna be on this. Someday people will be, oh, look what happened. And it's just foolish to not understand what's going on. So the relationship to the first Arya truth is wake the hell up. Wake up, try to see what's going on. No one's ever survived this life. Except a few Buddhists, maybe. So, all right? So first thing, Shepaja means, wake up. Wake up. That was how we're supposed to relate to the first Arya truth. Okay? What's your guess? You have to raise your hand, and I'm not offering a single dollar. What's your guess to how we should relate to the second Arya truth? The second Arya truth, by the way, was, where's this stuff coming from? Microphone. And it's too long. It'll take too long. Figure it out. Figure it out. Okay. Number 1, realize what's happening. Number 2, figure out where it's coming from. The classic example is your kitchen sink is leaking. There's water all over the kitchen floor. Okay, you can keep mopping it up day after day after day, or you can fix it. Crawl under the sink. What did I tell you was important if you crawl under the sink? Always wear nice underwear. And I never know a plumber who listened to this advice. They're always showing you, anyway, go look for where's this stuff coming from? Where's the problem coming from? Go be curious. Go look under the sink, okay? So the second action to be taken is look under the sink, stupid. Don't keep suffering over and over. Okay. Third, what's our relationship to the third Arya truth, which is the cessation, right? Stopping the water or stopping the pain. Get it done. Get it done. They say achieve. Do it. Do it. Nike. Just do it. Okay? Do it. Get it done. Stop the pain. It is possible. It's not easy, but it's possible. Okay? If you work hard, you can do it. Okay? And then that's why we're here. Okay? Number 4, path. We would say follow it. Okay? So there's 4, I would say let's make it simple. 4 single words. Pain, source, stopping, path. And the 4 actions are realize, discover, achieve, follow. Okay? 4 actions. Okay? And by the way, what's happening in Arya Nagarjuna's book at this point is that the other guy is saying, I don't see how you can do it. I don't see how you can do those 4 actions because according to you, everything's empty. How can you realize? Nothing. How can you discover? Nothing. How can you achieve? Nothing. How can you follow? Nothing. So first he says, the earlier verses in this chapter, which is called an examination of the Arya truth. So first the other guy comes and he says, look, if everything's empty, there's no 4 truths. And the guardian is like, he plays along. He says, why do you say that? And the guy says, well, if there is a 4 truths, what are you going to do with them? Are you going to realize, discover, achieve, follow? Because they don't exist, because they're empty. You're going to realize nothing. You're going to discover nothing. You're going to achieve nothing. You're going to follow nothing. You're so cool, Nagarjuna. Right? I'm starting to feel like that preacher. Oh, my wife. We listen to this cool preacher sometimes on the radio. Okay, so he's still criticizing Arya Nagarjuna. Arya Nagarjuna doesn't, what do you call it? He's not a token objector. He gets his space. Arya Nagarjuna, as we would expect of a bodhisattva, he gives him time to make his objections. He doesn't rush him. He says, you got any other We never do that, right? Someone criticizes us and we say, oh, that's wonderful. You have more? You want to criticize me more? We try to change the subject. And the guard is like, oh, really? Okay, yeah, I cannot see your point. Okay, all right. Okay, next picture, you guys. I call it happy in the stream, okay? Happy in the stream. For once, the AI got it right. I think she even has fingers, some fingers. And, okay. What do you think it represents? The mayor can guess, I guess. Huh? Yeah, you can say entering the stream, right? Gyunshuk, we call Gyunshuk. Okay, say Gyunshuk, entering the stream. If you see emptiness directly, then you enter the stream. Okay, and that is a synonym. You can say the person is an Arya, or you can say they are a stream enterer. $100. Who's paying all this money? When I teach for the university, I ring up the money because they pay. But in the long run, I pay. I forgot what I was going to ask. I was kidding, Rob. Why is it called entering the stream? Why is it called entering the stream when you see emptiness directly for the first time? And you give the microphone to... There's a corruption that goes on. The microphone giver splits the money with the... No, anyway, go ahead.
I'm not sure, but I think the stream of all the Aryas before...
Yeah. Anybody else?
Because there's no way back.
Good, nice, $100. Yeah. Yeah, it's like we went to Manhattan through the Holland Tunnel. Like once you get to the entrance of the Holland Tunnel, you can't turn around. Okay, I mean, people have tried. People from New Jersey have tried, but you would just die. Okay, you can't go back. Okay, it's a flow. You will inevitably and soon, which means less than 490 years, you will achieve nirvana and Buddhahood. Okay, you're on your way out, and nothing can stop it. And you couldn't stop it if you wanted to stop it. Okay, that's cool. That's called stream entering, Gyunshu. And there are four such levels. What are? Do you remember? I don't remember. Entering the stream, once returner, no returner, and then arhat. Yeah, arhat. So these are called the four fruits, or the four results, okay? You enter the stream, you come back to this world once, you don't come back to this world and you just go to a higher realm. And then 4, you just stop suffering existence. You don't have suffering, called arhat, enemy destroyer, okay? Those are the 4 fruits. They're called the 4 fruits, Allah, of the 4. Those are the 4 fruits of the proper relationship to the 4 truths. 4 truths, 4 actions to take with the 4 truths, and 4 results of those 4 actions. Why is it mentioned here? Yeah, Allah got it. I'll say it. If there's no 4 truths, then you can't relate to those 4 truths in the 4 classical ways. This one is called Buddhism. 4 truths, the 4 actions are Buddhism. Okay? And then if you do relate to the 4 truths with the 4 proper ways, you reach the 4 fruits. So now we got like 12. 4, 4, and 4. Who's talking? The other guy is still going. Like, yeah, well, if there's no 4 truths, I don't see how you can have 4 actions, and then you ain't gonna get to the 4 places you gotta go to. Got it? He's still, and the guard is like, good point. Okay, he's listening. All right, not like us. And so he's like letting the other guy go on, which is a classical method. All right, this is a classical method. Let the guy hang himself. Oh, keep going. Okay, all right. In debate, this is a classical method. It's called Tyongyur, Prasangika. All right. Next one. How are we doing on time? By the way, in 15 minutes, we'll start Q&A, roughly. Yeah. Or we'll see how it goes. I think it's a verse, you guys. Am I right? Is it verse 5? Yeah. Okay. So this is an interesting point, okay? The other guy says, according to you, there's no Dharma, which means there's no four truth, because that was the original Dharma. That was the first Dharma ever spoken on this planet, okay? Lord Buddha is sitting in the park on the grass, and there's 5 guys around him who used to be tiger cubs, 4 cubs and 1 mommy. And then he's saying, he's teaching them after being silent for 7 weeks because he thought no one could understand. Maybe he was right, I don't know. But he's teaching for the first time. The teaching was the fourth truth, okay? If you practice that teaching well, you will reach the 4 fruits, okay? And that's the real Sangha, okay? It's not monks and nuns, okay? The true Sangha is people who have seen emptiness, okay? That's the real community of Buddhism, okay? That's the real Buddhist community, is the people who have seen emptiness. Only them. They're the real Sangha. So here's the other guy still talking, okay? We're getting pretty deep into the chapter, and he's still letting the other guy talk. He's being very patient, okay? Giving the guy rope to hang himself, okay? And he said, oh, really? And the guy says, look, I'll tell you something else, Nagarjuna, all right? I'll tell you something else. One, according to you, there's no 4 truths because they're all empty. Okay. And if there's no 4 truths, no one can practice them. Okay. And if no one can practice them, no one reached the 4 fruits. Okay. And that means there's no Sangha. Yeah, I see your point. And that means there's no Buddha. Dharma, Sangha, Buddha. There's no Sambal. You know, you're like the ultimate non-Buddhist, you know. The definition of a Buddhist is a person who takes refuge in the 3 jewels, you know, which means emptiness, okay? A person who's trying to understand emptiness is a Buddhist. And if you're not, you're not. Okay? So now the attack got heavy. What's he saying? Oh, if your ideas are true, Arya Nagarjuna, if everything's empty, which means nothing matters, I should sit and stare at a wall, right? Then there's no 3 jewels. And there's no Buddhism. Okay? His attack is getting worse and worse. Okay? Now he's accusing the greatest Buddhist of all time after Buddha of not being a Buddhist. Okay, got it? And by the way, Arya Nagarjuna went through this stuff with people. He had this, you know, and normally when a new thinker who's correct comes to a world, they get hanged or crucified or, you know, all kinds of stuff. All right? Because people are like, what? You know, I'm happy with my donuts and okay. Yeah, then there's no 3 jewels. Okay? The attack is getting worse and worse. Somebody just said Nagarjuna doesn't believe in the 3 jewels, which means he's not a Buddhist. Okay. I'll go one more I'll do one more step, and then I'd like to talk about the houses, and then I'd take questions if there's time. Okay, next picture. Yeah. No, huh? He says, now the other guy's still going, okay? And I'm sorry, you're gonna have to leave the class with the other guy. And Arya Nagarjuna, if there's no three jewels, okay? If there's no three jewels, then there's no morality. Okay? Somehow his attack is worse than Buddhism. Okay? It's worse than saying there's no Buddhism. He's going deeper. He says, if there's no three jewels, then there's no Buddhism. If there's no Buddhism, there's no morality. Okay? And then, here's his logic, okay? If there's no three jewels, then there's no morality. Meaning, it's not true that if you treat other people well, good things will happen to you. And it's not true that if you hurt other people, bad things will happen to you. The laws of karma are wrong. If there's no three jewels, the laws of karma don't exist in the world. And that would be a true that would be a universe disaster. There would be no reason not to kill somebody if you like their t-shirt. Seriously, if you see what I mean? Then you couldn't sit in this room together. You'd be like, you wouldn't wear a nice shawl. Someone might kill you. And there'd be no law against it. Everyone would just kill when they want something, they would bomb the other side. Okay? This would be among true barbarians, among animals. It would be if you want something or you disagree with someone, bomb them, try to kill them. Then that would be the result. If there was no three jewels in the world. If there was no three jewels, the right thing, the smart thing to do when another country bothers you is to try to kill all of them. Okay? That would be the best thing to do. You see what I mean? Okay? If there's no three jewels, then people should just kill each other when they want ice cream or something. You know what I mean? Why not? Okay? Why not? Okay? And then he says, so we got two things so far. If there's no three jewels, there's no laws of ethics, morality. Nothing happens to you if you hurt somebody. And you can get what you want if you can bomb more cleverly than the other people. Okay? And then third one, then he goes to another one. The other guy, right? He says, the world could not speak to each other. There would be no languages. There would be no communication. The world could not communicate. The world could not say things to each other. There would be no language in the world. Okay? Now, I challenge you today in your meditations, okay, in your retreat. What the heck? How does he get there? How does he get there? Okay? How does he get there? Okay? If the three jewels didn't exist, I told the AI, give me three ladies covered with jewels. And that's the best he could do. All right, I'm sorry. Okay? If there was, three things would happen if there's no three jewels in the world. A, no three jewels. B, no karma and consequences. No morality, no ethics in any religion. And then number three, no language. no expression, no way to talk. How does he make that leap? Okay, how does the other guy make that leap? By the way, let me check something. By the way, that's the end of the other guy's rant. Okay, rant means okay, like he's finally finished. Okay, but the way he finishes is mysterious, and you guys have to figure it out. And I'll give $99 tomorrow. Or no, this afternoon. When is no? Half hour is too short, right? Yeah, tomorrow I'll give $100 to whoever gives the best answer. What's the question again? He says, by the way, if you're gonna be a really good student by tomorrow, give me the whole flow. Give me the whole flow. Look, Arya Nagarjuna, if everything is empty, then there's no four truths. If there's no four truths, there's no four ways to do the four truths. If there's no way to do the four truths, there's no four results of doing the four truths. If there's no four results of doing the truths, there's no Buddha either, which means there's no three jewels. And if there's no three jewels, then what was the... Yeah, there's no cause and effect. That you can kill and then nothing will happen to you. And if that's true, then there's no language. Okay, especially towards the end, it gets a little mysterious. Okay, and why does Nagarjuna go there? Okay, why does Arya Nagarjuna go there? We got to talk about it. Okay. Okay, we'll continue in the next class with that. I'm at 6.7. I'm sure Tim will remind me. Okay, I don't always finish as much as I'm supposed to finish. Okay, we're going to talk about the 3 houses. 5 houses, sorry. I was just testing you. Okay, you got those pictures, you guys? Princeton. Yeah. Okay, so those of you who weren't here yesterday or you were asleep, which normally happens towards the end of the week. So with the MBA, EMBA University, we went on a field trip. We taught at Princeton, near Princeton. And we visited Princeton and we saw some of the classical houses at Princeton. And I was describing how beautiful it is, this relationship between the houses and the university, okay? So the university is like this big thing that pays for everything. And they have, how much did we say? $31 billion. They're sitting on $31 billion. ACI is sitting on $31. No, but you have a university. They keep the money. They keep things running. They make sure everybody's doing their thing the right way. And then there's departments or houses, okay? And you specialize. You don't try to get 10 PhDs at the same time. You go into so we're going to talk about this idea of ACI being houses because the original ACI Foundation courses, 18 courses, takes 7 years to do properly. It has been done in 1 weekend by a certain naughty ex-monk, which is, anyway. And he spent the whole weekend. He started on Friday afternoon, and he copied the answer keys into the homeworks and turned them in. And he finished by Monday morning. And then I said, go to someplace. And anyway, it is possible. But it was designed to take 6 or 7 years. Okay? And then after that, there was a Diamond Way course, which was designed to take 6 or 7 years. So now you got 14 years. If you add Lam Rim, Steps of the Path, then that's it. We took 14 years. And I did it in my talkative way, and I was not in a big rush. I think it should be done happily. My teacher did it for 30 years, so I saved you half the time. Okay, so that's, and then, you want to tack on a 3-year retreat. So how many years? We got 31 years now. And then, what's the 5th thing we do? Meditation. Yeah. Okay, anyway, it's too much. You don't go to Princeton and get a PhD in everything. You get a PhD in one thing. And there are requirements to go to other classes. Like in my religion department, I was required to take some psychology and stuff like that. Okay, so anyway, what we're trying to do is allow you to specialize and become a master at one thing. And then, of course, you should have some background in other things. But what we need at ACI in the next generation, after Grandpa, we need masters. We need people who are masters of meditation. And then we need people who are masters of retreat. And then we need people who are masters of the classics. And then we need people who are masters of Longmen. And then we need people who are masters of the Diamond Way. Because we need teachers for the next generation. We need people. And it can't be impossible to be a teacher. It can't take 50 years to be a teacher. Because then you only have 1 year to teach and then you die. So, it's too much. So we're trying to create a way where you could join a house, grow up in a house, and then become a master in the house. And then when somebody, even from another house, wants to learn to meditate, they come to you. And they come to Samadhi House and they say, I'm a classics master, or I'm a retreat master, mountain master. But I would like to know some of this other stuff. Can your master teach some classes? So that's the goal, is to create different masters. We got to talk about how we do it. But the general idea is there's a university that basically they take care of the business stuff. They keep the rules and stuff like that. And then there's 5 departments or 5 houses. And they specialize, and the university takes care of the paperwork. What do you call it? Red tape. Volokita? How'd that come in my mind? I don't know. Short circuit. Somebody else takes care of the weird stuff. And then you have, so you gotta have Tim is up here, okay, and his staff, and then we all have our separate houses. And there should be a nice balance, If we run out of money, Tim should be there. If we have a program we really want to do, he should disappear. Right? Okay, so like that. Someone has to keep the standards. Next picture. Is that the order I gave you? I don't know. Yeah, okay. I'm going to review the 5 houses quickly, just for people who didn't catch yesterday's class, because yesterday's class was technically a translation class. So here we go. You can join Classics House. Basically, we'll talk about the requirements each day, okay? But Classics House basically preserves the classics, translates the classics, and focuses on the classics. This is the 18 foundation courses of ACI. This is the baby Geshe course. And we'll talk more about it, okay? I personally, what I'm encouraging you this week is think about these 5 pictures. I find pictures are easier than blah, blah. Just remember the 5 pictures. Here's a, wise looking guy with a book. Okay? And is that what you want to be? Is that what, if I said you can be a master, you can learn to be a master, do you want to be this guy? Does that make you like, wow, that's really cool? Okay? Or are you like, oh, too many facts, Okay, next house. Next picture. Oh, see? No, it's a Samadhi house. No, there you go. Do you want to be a meditation master? Okay. And do you want to help people to learn to meditate? Is that what you would like to do in your life? Would you like to be basically a meditation teacher? Would you like to focus on the meditation arts and get good at it? And by the way, we got the stuff, okay? If you're serious about meditation, you cannot learn it anywhere as well as you can learn it in ACI. Not possible. They don't even have the books. They have no idea. They have no tradition. They just make up something. You know, you go to some yoga studio, they're like, close your eyes. Think of, you know, notice the donut in your stomach. And, you know, and we have great tradition, real tradition. And we've translated most of the books, and we have a living tradition. Somebody asked me, how many meditations you doing for Tim? I said 101. Oh, do you know that many? No, I had to cut it. Okay? I mean, you meditate in the monastery for 25 years every morning for 2 hours or something. Then you don't do the same one over and over again, okay? Right? There's many beautiful ones. And that's a master. That's a master. Okay, third one. I call it Mountain House. And that's a retreat master. Would you like to be a retreat master? Is it attractive to you to come out to Diamond Mountain and go into a cabin and do retreat? Is that what calls to you? And is that what you would like to be a master of? Okay. One thing I wanted to say is what I talked with Stanley. Stanley has a new organization called Innovation Retreats. They are mostly focusing on retreats for business people or artists or writers or musicians, or I'd say mainly business people. I can imagine a retreat master who has a dual specialty, double specialty. So somebody comes to them and says, I want to do a retreat. And then they say, do you want a Buddhist retreat or do you want an innovation retreat or something like that? You know, they'll say, what do you want to use the retreat for? Do you want to get enlightened or do you want to build a $250 million business? What would you like to make new products at your business? You know, would you like to learn how to be creative? So I imagine there will be both specialties, okay? Two different kinds of retreat. Next one. I call it Staircase House. And it's really a synthesized Buddhism, okay? It's deep, it's Lamrim. Okay? And it took 14 years for me to teach Lamrim. It took 7 years to teach ACI. So it's supposed to be the short path. But it's deep. It's totally deep. Don't blow it off. Don't think it's not important. In a way, it's more experiential than the classics. You can get through the classics and still be an asshole. But you can't get through the Lamrim and still be, I shouldn't use that language, my boss is here. But you see what I mean? Okay, Lamrim changes your heart drastically. Okay? And maybe that's where you want to go. Okay? Maybe you want to be a master of Lamrim. Okay? And by the way, the audiences for Lamrim are bigger, meaning more people will listen to Lamrim than will listen to the Geshe course. Okay. I told Veronica, we started my Geshe class with 60 people. At the end, we had 2. Okay. And you can't find people who are crazy to do that. You know? My teacher taught Lamrim for 30 years. More and more people came. That's fine. Okay, number 5. Diamond House. It's not so much focused on diamond as emptiness. It's more focused on diamond in the sense of somebody told me yesterday, you should call it hidden Buddhism. And I kind of like it. You know, I kind of like it. And the idea is that you work in a company for 19 years in Manhattan, and you do all the things that an executive does for 19 years, and no one knows you're a Buddhist. And you change 1,000 people in the building. And because of that, that becomes the most successful manufacturing business in the history of New York City. Okay? Because it's all Buddhists who don't know they're Buddhists. Got it? Okay? And that's the real secret way. Okay? That's the real secret way. And that's sexy. That's really fun. Okay? So you choose what kind of master you want to be. If you want to learn to ring your bell at the right time, that's part of Diamond Way. But it's obviously not the main thing. Okay? It's part of the Diamond Way course that you will ring your bell at the That's what you learn at the Tantric college. I think it's not enough. I think it's not the full thing. I think you have to do a secret Buddhism. But so anyway, you're going to learn both. Okay. All right. Next picture. What is the next picture? Oh, yeah. It's a joke for those people in the MBA program. No one has ever asked me to prove I went to Princeton. And when I got my job in the diamond business, I offered to show them my degree, and they said, "We don't care, and we're paying you $7 an hour." And I'm like, wait a minute, I got this piece of paper, and they're like, take it or leave it. You know, that's the truth, okay? Why I put this up here, when we went to Princeton, we were debating what language is on the degree, and it's Latin, okay? But the point is, at that class, I said cum laude in the middle, which means the best of the best. It means you got a super degree. And at the time, someone asked me, well, how many students get that? And I said 1 out of 100. Then I checked online because I want to make sure I'm not lying to all my students. And there was a scandal recently at Princeton because the cum laude, the honors, is decided not by the university, by the house. The house decides honors. The university does not decide the honors. Okay? Whether you get a super degree comes from your immediate professors. And it does not come from the university. It doesn't come from Tim. It comes from the director of your house or the assistant director of your house, okay? Cum laude. And it got to 41%. And then the university said, stop. You know, this is corruption. You know, and people would go to their professor and say, you're so handsome, or you're so beautiful, and can I take you to dinner? And then they'd say, oh, you're honors cum laude, you know. And it became a kind of corruption within this university because the university as a whole, ACI as a whole, wasn't watching the houses. And the house went crazy. And the house said, everybody's a good person. Everybody gets honors, you know. Then I was really embarrassed. I told them I'm 1 out of 100. I'm 41 out of 100. You know, which is almost half. Then they had a big scandal, and the university put a number on it. I think it's 10% or something like that. The university stepped in and said, "You're not keeping standards. You're not running a good house." So I think there should. The reason I put the degree up here is. You think about this structure. I think you need both. Sometimes the house gets out of control and the university has to say, come on, and sometimes the university is too slow and boring, and the house has to say, we're doing something cool, we don't care. I think there has to be this tension between Tim and the rest of us, and so I look forward to that. With the house structure, we bring in more creativity, more excitement, but we also bring in the possibility of chaos. So there has to be an overall, structure, and especially for finances, for money, because in the end, if the department needs money, they go to the university. And who pays the department professors is the university. So the university maintains some order, and some standards for the university. And the house doesn't go crazy and do whatever they want. But then again, the house can do creative things because the university is boring. Okay, got it? All right, which means, next picture, and I will stop in the next 5 minutes, don't worry. We propose to have a director and an assistant director of each house, okay? Which means we need how many? 10, 5 times 2. Okay, we need 10 good people. Okay, so, and we're thinking that between now and Kyoto, which is December, we cook this project. We cook the 5 houses idea. That gives us 2 months or something like that. And we cook all the ideas, and then maybe you come to Tim and you say, by the way, I have an idea for a director of Samadhi House. And Tim says, who? And you say, me. Okay, and God bless. Okay, do it. If you want to lose your hair, if you want to run a house, or you think it'd be fun to be a director of a house or help run a house. And by the way, in my idea, you can still do your other projects. I don't care. I almost respect people. I guess I want to do a separate, yoga master thing. I don't care. That's your thing, You want to do, just don't get in trouble. Don't do anything illegal, which means sex and taxes. Okay? Those 2 things you're not allowed to do. But, you want to do other stuff as long as you don't hurt anybody, I don't care. But under the 5 houses structure, you can be a director, you can be an assistant director, okay? And I think it should be international. I don't think it should all be Americans. There's no Americans who even do ACI very well, except a few. So, it's up to you guys. I got one more picture, I think. Oh, here's the bad news, just when you were excited. Oh, there's the director and the assistant director. You figure out which is which. Next. Oh yeah, this one. You got out of the 18 courses, but you still have to take 5. That's the bottom line. If you're a nice, intelligent young lady from Malaysia, this is what I'm saying. You still got to take the 5 courses, okay? And otherwise, it's going to end up like this lady who's asking the French guy in Paris how to get to the 3rd subway stop. He speaks French. She speaks American English. Okay? And they have a communication breakdown on the street. Understand? To some extent, we all have to speak the ACI language. Okay? If you don't know the basics of Buddhism, I don't want you to be in a house. Okay? To get into a house, which is called member status, okay? To get into a house, first you have to finish 5 courses, okay? I took away 13 courses. You should kiss my feet, okay? All right? Minimum 5 courses, all right? And, okay? And that's to get into any house. You cannot get into any house as a member, okay? The lowest level is member, which is already a high level. You already can speak ACIanese. ACI-lish? Anyway, okay, you got to speak the ACI language. Otherwise, we can't communicate. Okay. You got to do these 5 courses. And we estimate, me and Tim, we estimate that's about 18 months of work. So if you're not willing to do 18 months of work to get into a house, then go somewhere else, okay? Most of you have already finished most of these courses, I think. And we're not asking you to do them again. We're just saying in your life you should finish these 5. Or you can't speak Buddhism. You don't really know Buddhism, okay? All right, I'm sorry I ran over, which is very unusual. And I'm sorry I didn't get in the Q&A, which is extremely unusual, right, Shumping? And we'll do a Q&A in the next class. So take a 15-minute break, pee break, and drink, okay? You're in Arizona, you're in the desert, you gotta drink. When you drink, there's a cause and effect. Okay, all right, bye. See you.